Uh-oh, I'm all out of stamina and dragon hearts. What up, viewers? What up, Calc Soups here, and welcome to the Friend Zone, my monthly video game show where I discuss the latest games with my friends. Today we'll be hopping from realm to realm, dodge rolling, and fighting dimensional monstrosities in Remnant 2. We will be discussing what we were expecting and how to describe it. Everyone's played our history of the franchise. Everyone, spoiler alert, everybody's played the previous one, and we loved it so much that we really wanted to hop in on the second one. We'll talk about launch, picking your starting class, walking through the tutorial, and then we'll get into like the different worlds and the sense of discovery and the differences between different playthroughs and people's campaigns. We'll talk about different builds, different class combinations, what classes we kind of ultimately ended up on, how gear helped us make those kind of builds. We'll talk about the bosses. We'll talk about narrative. We'll talk about solo versus multiplayer play. We'll talk about the end game, final boss, kind of new game plus, increasing difficulty. We'll talk about the missing roguelike mode, and then we'll kind of wrap it up with our final thoughts. But without further ado, let's hop in and meet the friends of the Friend Zone. Hello, friends.
Hello.
Hello.
First off, we got Kevin.
Hello. I touched a crystal and woke up here.
Great.
I'm going to talk about Remnant.
And we got Patrick.
Come bask in the warmth of my big red crystal.
Big red crystal. Gotta love the crystal. Well, cool. I feel we'll breeze through these first ones because we kind of know what we were expecting and our history with the franchise. But I think there's a pretty easy way to sum up what this game is for anybody who hasn't played Remnant before. If anybody wants to hop in.
Yeah, I mean, if you haven't played Remnant before, then it's Dark Souls with guns, and if you
Exactly.
if you have played Remnant from the Ashes, then Remnant 2 is more Remnant from the Ashes. So
yeah, which is all you should really want or ask for. Yeah,
that's all I wanted.
Yeah. Cool. I don't know if there's any particular interesting tidbits about like launching the game launching other than or I don't know, anticipation or hype or marketing. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, if you go back to our end of year thing from last year, you might recall that this was actually one of my most anticipated games for this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, same.
Agreed.
Yeah. So I was pretty hyped for it and looking forward to it quite a bit. Remnant from the Ashes was such like an unexpected surprise.
Yeah.
It ended up being just one of my favorite games. So I was very excited for this.
Yeah, and we didn't have any. I don't think there was any like delays or anything like that, so we didn't have to like push off our hype. We just kind of knew that it was. We eventually knew it was coming out, and it came out, and it was awesome.
Yeah,
I think they did like a minor delay or something.
I feel like
it was like weeks, not months. Like,
yeah, maybe a slight one, but honestly, I just kind of poked my head out from under the sea of games that I've been buried in this year.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Coming out the next week, so I get like relieved when games are delayed now.
I know. I'm like, oh, thank God, I have time to finish what I'm playing.
Yeah. Yes. That's funny.
That
and like, oh, okay, maybe it'll actually be functional when it launches.
Also, yes, please release like a functional game too, please.
Yeah. Well, cool. What starting class did everybody start with? And I think there's 5. There was 5 at the get-go.
If you pre-ordered,
yeah. Yeah.
But otherwise, yeah, I think it was the 4. So yeah, I picked Handler because I knew I was probably going to be playing solo a decent amount, and you get a good boy. And also, it seemed like a good balance because you also get a bunch of support abilities for your team. So
yeah, I went medic at first. Yeah, because I was trying to do healing, and that I think that worked for a while.
Yeah,
I was oh man, I'm like looking up right now because I forgot the name. Challenger, I think.
Yeah, that's the melee one.
The melee one. Because I didn't do any melee in the first one really because it just like it didn't feel bad, but it didn't feel like effective.
Sure.
Yeah, it's definitely. This game still has issues with melee, but it's definitely better in this game than it was. in the
Yeah.
first one.
Yeah, and I ended up with some melee builds that like really tore shit up. So
Yeah.
They give you so many tools to make yourself really durable that it feels
Mhm.
a lot more viable.
Yeah.
totally.
Cool.
The other nice thing, just to December, is like starting class ended up not really mattering because you can
Sure.
unlock and plot them in and out freely, which I was really pleased with.
Yes, that was very.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a very very cool kind of way to think about. Yeah, classes and that'll kind of probably get into the final builds kind of conversation. But yeah,
Yeah.
ultimately you pick your starting class, you work through it. It's almost like you probably don't end up playing your starting class towards the end of the game just because you're like leveling up other classes and stuff. So it's it's a little weird because, or at least I didn't end up like playing medic throughout the rest of the game for the most part. But
Yeah, I mean, I definitely like slotted out handler for a while because it was max level and I wanted to level up the other ones. But
Sure.
it's still like I still pull it out when it's like one
Challenging
of my
or something.
game
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
It's really
I kind of doubled down on my starting class, and then
Okay.
I mean I leveled up other classes just so I could like do the dual class thing and
Yeah.
earn some of their good perks and abilities. But
Yeah.
for the most part, my main stayed challenger.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Um, what the tutorial was brief, and I think that was a good omen. Because they kind of wanted you to get right into the action very quickly. Because if you're picking up Remnant 2, you probably know what you're getting into. So yeah, I kind of appreciated that portion of the tutorial.
Yeah, I
It doesn't
definitely did as as someone who played a lot of the first one, but I do wonder like what it was like for somebody
Oh,
jumping into this one blind. Like I don't
sure.
know if it doesn't do a lot to like explain anything.
Yes.
Yeah, I do feel like it really like as far as like the world and the story, it's kind of like it really just throws you in.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
But that's why I was kind of hoping that Steven would pick it up just so that I could hear a perspective from someone who didn't play the first game at all.
Sure.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd be very curious. Yeah, I think John would have been a means to that as well.
Oh, did you not play the first one?
He
either?
didn't play the
Okay.
first one either. But yeah, so yeah, I could see how that. I mean, even I, somewhat remembering the story from the first one, still had no context for like the narrative going into this one. So, or at least as far as the tutorial was going, but there was like there was characters and things that mentioned, and like that kind of turned on a light bulb on the way back, cobwebbed portions of my brain. But
Yeah.
And, I mean, the first game was pretty light on story too.
Sure.
And you're not really. This game was interesting. I mean, if we want to talk a little bit, I see we have narrative further down the list.
Yeah, we could do it here. Yeah.
Yeah,
At least catch people up. Yeah.
I mean, I thought it was interesting because like the overarching story is pretty. Like you have the stuff with Clementine and everything, but it's not really super well fleshed out or explained.
Mm-hmm.
But I found the individual like world narratives fairly compelling.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was sort of an interesting sort of because they don't really slot into the overarching narrative beyond like that you need a MacGuffin at the end of them.
Yes.
But the like self-contained stories of each of the worlds, I thought they were some were better than others, but overall, like yeah, was pleasantly surprised on that.
Well, yeah. Speaking of worlds, like, so the first world I get after the tutorial was Yeisha, and it was like, oh, I'm immediately on familiar ground. I'm like interacting with the pan, and like I was like, oh, okay, this kind of like sunk me back into okay, this is Remnant, and I'm interacting with familiar faces. Now that's going to be completely different if people randomly go into freaking the dead one, Nerud, and like just have no context for like what's going on or
My first world was Nerud, but I actually have a pretty now that I've played through and I've done every like story because each world has two storylines basically, and I have a pretty strong opinion that there's like kind of a best one for like a first experience. There's like a best sequence for a first experience, in my opinion.
Yeah. Okay.
So I really, yeah, I mean, spoilers for certain Remnant worlds and stuff.
Sure.
But I think Narud is kind of the worst place to start because the setting is very cool, but it's kind of open and empty, and there's not a lot of like the whole point is that it's kind of a dead world,
Yes.
and so it doesn't really like let you ease in or give it's like a good environment, but it's not like a good first environment. I
Agreed.
really
Right.
think that the best place to start is Lawsome, and
I think so.
specifically the sanitarium in Lawsome.
Okay.
Because the way
Yes.
there's sort of two things in Lawsome, because there's the fairies and there's the like Dran world
Yeah.
that are overlapping with each other, and one you start in the Dran world, one you start in the fairy world.
Uh-huh.
But the sanitarium one is so cool because you just start, and if you don't know what's coming, you
Uh-huh.
wake up there and you're sort of going through Bloodborne world, and you're going through a creepy sanitarium,
Uh-huh.
and you don't encounter any fae until
Yes.
you go into the attic of the sanitarium, and then all these like other creatures start attacking you, and you find a glowing portal, and you run into Namiwe, and like it's sort of
Yes.
it's like you discover a whole second world, and if you don't know that it's coming, it's
Yeah.
really pretty cool.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
the other one is cool, but it's sort of like it sort of spoils what can be a really strong experience in that sanitarium, I think.
Yes. Yeah. And it's a little bit more grounded, and you're like trying to. Is there children at the house or something? Like it feels a little bit more.
Yeah,
it definitely eases you into the weird a bit more.
Yes.
Yeah, I like the sort of slow unfolding of the world, whereas you're starting in the fairy world, and then there's not like a big reveal moment from the other side of Lawsome.
Yeah. I almost think I would actually use that as like somewhat of a criticism of like, at least when I first experienced Lawsome, it was you did the fae, and then you did Bloodborne world, and I would almost say it's a little jarring and like disjointed of just like, okay, I'm in this like fantasy world with flying, fairy angelic creatures, and all of a sudden I go to this like Cockney Bloodborne Resident Evil world, and like, like what is going on here? These two places exist at the same time. Like,
this is the same world.
Yeah.
There's not like a story or an NPC or anything that sort of explains that transition or what's happening in that side of it. Whereas, when you're in the sanitarium side, it really sort of is like, oh, people are being like hunted and the world has gone crazy, but you don't really know why. Is it ghosts? What's going on? And then you sort of, like,
yeah.
I didn't get to experience it because I think all of us started in the fairy world at this time, but the more I thought about it, it's like, man, if you're just going through Bloodborne world and then you get attacked by glowing angel things and you walk through a glowing door and you talk to Namiwe and she explains what's going on with the fae.
Yeah.
Like, it's a much bigger, like, oh my God, I understand this world is crazy. This is cool.
Yeah.
Right.
So, there's definitely some are stronger than others. The One True King storyline and the other one is also interesting and fun, and Phelan and Phelan are interesting characters and stuff.
Yes.
But, but it's just a little.
I had when my coworker started and I was playing through him. I think he had the sanitarium, and so I think it was. I think you're right. I think he had a really good experience with like his first world, in that.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, we're doing sanitarium stuff, and then we go into the fairy world, and like, he had a really cool experience with that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that the optimal way I'd organize the worlds for like a first playthrough is basically the opposite of what I got.
Sure.
You do Lost Sanatorium, and then you do Yeisha with the Ravager and the Doe.
Oh, yes.
And then you do Narud as your last one. And I think kind of either one on Narud would work fine because they're more similar than the other ones, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I love like Lawsome. Both of its areas I think are really interesting, even if they're feel a little disjointed.
Yeah.
But like, it's kind of disappointing that like Yeisha is one of them when like we've already been there, and
sure,
and then Darud, which is, I mean, I know it's Narud, but
Yeah.
it's, I don't know, it's kind of a slog. Like, I think it looks really cool, and like I like the vibe, like the story of it's interesting, but like in terms of actually playing there, I'm like, okay, am I done here yet? Have I?
I agree. I really like. I found the story and like the history of Narud really
Yes.
compelling, but
Yeah.
the mechanics of actually playing in it was my least favorite. I think.
Sure.
Yeah, and like the fake walls that just make you puke and stuff. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah,
Not my
there
favorite
would have been a
place.
better way to do that. I don't know. It was annoying.
Oh
All in
yeah.
all,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, just the
Fog. Yeah.
the puke clouds that
Yeah.
are the way that
The
determine
bounds
the
are
play
determined.
area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was. Yeah. It took me a second, but yes. Yeah, that felt really weird, especially in a game where you want to like wall hump everything to try and find all the secrets. It's like
Yeah,
there's
and
not a yeah.
yeah. I do feel like one of the main reasons that was done was just because one of the secret classes is hidden out in the fog.
Yes.
And,
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember that. Yeah. I mean, I would slightly argue for Familiar Ground Yesha being maybe your first world, and I don't know that. I feel like the Red Court, at least, like you get introduced to the Pan again, and like they set you on his quest. I think there's a little bit to that, but I could definitely agree with what you're saying too, Kev.
Geishas are pretty close. I just thought that it was just, you hear so much about the Doe and the Ravager,
Yeah.
and in like a lot of the side dungeons and stuff, and I just thought it was kind of compelling to
Make
have
that
a
your
conversation with the Ravager.
yeah. Yes.
But maybe that's also my bias, because like the Ravager is also in the first game, and it was interesting to like see the Ravager again.
That was the one you
Yeah,
could
like I
sneak past.
appreciate that it's there to connect the games, you know?
Yeah.
Like that's what it's there for, but
Yeah, that might be my own bias. Maybe as a fresh start, Red Court would make more sense. I could definitely see that.
or I don't know, I think maybe that could have been the tutorial zone. Like
Oh,
Oh. Yeah.
maybe we don't need to do this like Earth thing at all, because Earth is definitely the most boring,
Yeah.
you know, of the realms in the first game.
Yep.
And so like maybe we just like jump right in. We already have learned the crap that Ford, teaches us or
Yep.
whatever. And like our first job is like exploring Yesha and like establishing that we have like a relationship with the Pan. That's why we have like that salesman in our base,
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
and all that. And like, and then just like make Yesha like a longer tutorial that's also sort of explaining story wise why we're there and what the problem is,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it reestablishes the root as the issue, even though you like
right, like it explains
dealt
why
with
they're
it.
back, what the
Yeah.
problem is with that,
Yeah.
and also that like it establishes like that it's not that fucking bananas to go to these other realms and communicate with these other beings,
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe something a little more, because your character's surprisingly cool with most of what happens, or they kind of.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some dialogue when you first go into your first world where they're kind of freaking out, but other
Yeah.
than that, I mean, then that's how it was in the first game too. You're just like a stoic. You're just like,
Yeah.
I'm in another world now.
Nameless. Yeah. Unnamed.
Now
Right.
I'll meet all of the people in this world.
Yeah.
But I mean, we could have just been like told that like our job was to go try to find Clementine. Clementine's missing in one of these realms, and so
Yeah.
tutorial. We're in this first realm. We're looking for someone named Clementine. We don't know much about their deal, and then we gradually learn about it until we run into her in the labyrinth or whatever. Like,
Yeah. I don't know.
the hook, the narrative hook, just could have been much stronger, and just like, and then instead of like making Yesha a full explorable realm again, like then we could add a new one. But I guess that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do agree. It would be nice to have one more new world.
So yeah, that was one question I like. In the first one, was there 4? Was it 4 worlds in the labyrinth?
I think if you count Earth, there was 4.
Interesting, because this one only having 3 felt smaller.
Well, although
but yeah,
let me double check, because It felt smaller, but the worlds also felt much denser than the first.
Yeah, there's a lot more.
Absolutely agree. 100% agree. I was just like, after the third world, going into the final world felt like oh, I felt like I'm missing a quarter.
Okay, yeah. So the first one, there was, if you count Earth, then yeah, there was Earth, Rom, Corsus, and Geisha.
Yes.
And then the Labyrinth, and
and
then there was also one DLC world.
Oh, sure.
For the first game. Recent.
I don't remember. I don't know if I'd return for the DLC.
Yeah, it's the ice world full of rat people. So if you don't remember that, you probably didn't play it.
Sure.
It's also where you meet Clementine and get
yes,
backstory in the first game.
Okay.
It was a good DLC.
Yeah. So discovery on this, I mean, can't talk about these worlds without like all the cool nits and findings and all that kind of stuff. What any kind of cool discovery stories about each of these different worlds?
I mean, there's a lot of really great kind of dense design that went into these worlds. The puzzles are generally good, and they just shower you with like gear, especially at the beginning when you don't have any of like you're constantly getting, especially rings.
Yes.
So many rings.
Yeah.
But you're just constantly getting exciting new stuff, or stuff that you're like, "Ooh, I could see what build this is for." Okay.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of fun. They're full of secrets and stuff in a way that I found really satisfying. My biggest standout surprise was when Patrick and I were playing together, and we found that world and that dungeon in Lossum that's like a big game.
Oh
yeah.
That you're playing with the guy, and based on the moves you make in the game, doors open up all over it. Yeah. That was like that one blew my mind a little bit. It was really fun.
Yeah, some of the puzzles, especially that one, were just so good.
Yeah. I liked the court, the fake court, discovering who the killer was and all that kind of stuff, and traveling.
The murder mystery was really cool.
Yes. And I think top of my list is the Nerude climbing into the on one of the side dungeons. I climbed into a pod, and then all of a sudden you die and wake up, or you go the screen goes black, and then you wake up and you're in this rat's nest terrible thing, and then you have to fight a boss. So I thought that was a cool oh, why would I climb into this pod? And then you climb in, and then all of a sudden, boom, you're fighting a mini boss.
Yeah. In a similar note, I think maybe my favorite thing is in Lossum, when you can just be walking by a sewer grate, and suddenly one of the scary monsters just grabs your ankle and pulls you in, and you die. And then you wake up in his lair and have to fight him.
Yeah.
And then you are rewarded by a new class. I just found that so surprising and rewarding and just hilarious.
Yeah.
Even if it doesn't really play super nicely if you're playing multiplayer.
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, I just thought that was such a funny and memorable thing to have happen.
I did
scary the first time it happens.
Yes. I did restarting the clock in Lossum 2, because that was my first Lossum world. Was oh, there's this clock, and what's going on, and the people in it are trapped, and then so we have to reset the clock, but it's a doomsday clock kind of thing. I thought that was all kind of cool, because you get this side dungeon which is nothing, and you're what did I actually get here, except for a cogwheel for a clock, and you're oh, there's a big one in the middle of town. So I thought that was cool as well.
Yeah, again, it's one of those cool puzzles where it's oh, I have to set the clock to the stopped clock in town, and then I get a gear. Yeah, it was just a good sequencing puzzle.
Speaking of, go for it.
First of all, the Lament dungeon in Geisha is insane.
Oh my god! Yes,
there's just so much shit hidden in it.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Crazy. You just keep finding, and then like we comb that place and we find like a bunch of weapons and everything, and then later I'm talking to Casey and he's like, oh, I found like 2 hidden walls in there too, and it's like, oh, there's like we hadn't found half of the freaking dungeon.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you get the like weeping angel guy following you around, and like, yeah.
Yeah, which like I found out that tile set can spawn in like a bunch of different dungeons in Geisha. It doesn't always pop
Okay.
up in the Lament, which is kind of interesting.
Oh, cool.
There's even like variability inside the dungeons that like they can spawn different encounters like that, which is kind of cool. There's also a really neat one in Geisha that's like a big sort of orrery thing where you're moving around shadows on the floor. Did either of you guys run into this?
Geisha Ori.
Yeah, it's like I forget what it's called, but it's basically like there's like a bunch of machinery in the ceiling that's casting shadows on the floor.
Oh,
like
yes.
Different things in the mythology.
Yes, I have
and then
done that.
You have to like read the book and align it to like the elements of each story to open the doors in it. I thought that was a little annoying with pulling levers over and over again, but a cool idea for a puzzle.
Agreed. Although there's another part that has to do with like the blood moon, and I thought the blood moon mechanic was a little bunk and hard to like work with and understand.
It's just a little too rare at times, but yeah.
But because part of that dungeon as well is like if it's a blood moon, then you get a secret chest or something too. And
yeah, there's a couple of dungeons that have blood moon doors that only open if you enter the dungeon during a blood moon, which I did not know about until I was doing a later game sweep and trying to find certain things. So that was a little internet help for me on that one. Speaking
of blood moons, and since my class was tied to it, I got very familiar with what a blood moon was, and had figured out some little janky hacks to try and get the blood moons to trigger. But I think there was still a sense of discovery, because I think when me and Kevin were like running through Geisha, it was like, oh, there's just like little purple orbs. What do we do? And then like you shoot one because it's your only way to interact with the world, and then you get like, oh, what's blood moon essence for? And then you eventually find the tablet. It's like, oh, if you have enough blood moon essence, you can get a subclass, and it's like, okay, cool. And then knowing what I knew about Geisha, it was like, okay, this is gonna unlock the summoner class, and that's exactly what I want to be forever and ever. So, so that was all. And that leads straight into builds. So yeah, I knew I wanted to be a summoner. In most games, I just want my pets to do my work for me. So yeah. So that was at least the first class I wanted to get after medic. Which with regen as like the basis of the class was like really powerful, because like regen in the game is freaking bonkers good. So
regen build is crazy. That's like one of the best survivability builds. It's just stacking health regen and being Wolverine.
Yes. Yeah. Although I do think some of the roly-poly, I mean, any melee like pet, I just feel like sometimes just couldn't work, considering every world has a flying enemy that just gets annoying to deal with. But that was
Also, if I'm in your world and you summon a bunch of root monsters, I'm going to shoot your summons. Because
True.
Right.
my brain is wired to shoot root monsters. But
yes. Anyway. Yeah. So the is the alchemist the one that the sewer one unlocks? Yeah.
Yeah, and that I love the alchemist. Man, that class is fun.
Yeah.
They just it's all buffs, and you can use extra concoctions, and I love the design of having potions that you're throwing, and you can either throw them at your feet to like get the buff around you, or you can hold it down and throw them at your allies. I just think that was such a cool, like, versatile way to do a thematic alchemist class.
Yes.
Focused around buffs.
Yeah.
And their last one that gives you like a get up if you're gonna die is really fun and excellent.
Very powerful. What was your second class, Patrick?
Or final mostly build? Medic. It was
okay.
Because I was kind of doing this like paladin tank build.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
And that being able to like pop like a full shield with my shield generated, because all my melee attacks are generating
Oh,
shield.
shield, cool.
I was just like, I was barely getting hit, and then when I did get hit, I had like 70% damage reduction because of all my armor and stuff.
Yeah.
And then if you got me down below 30% health, I had like almost 90% damage reduction because of a ring that I had on.
Okay.
And then even if you did kill me because of the challengers class thing, I
Passive.
just get back up.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow. I was curious how viable the shield, like, because you'd see the ring and it'd be like, oh, you get 15 shield or whatever, and I was like, is that helpful at all? But it's cool to hear that like there's a whole build around that, and you could.
Yeah, it's sort of
That's
like
awesome.
because you generate like a percentage shield every melee strike. So like,
Oh, cool.
yeah, that's the mutator.
yeah,
It's sort of like health regen or anything else. It's like you get a bunch of disparate pieces of your build that add like incremental shields, but then when you have them all running at the same time, it's like it really adds up.
Awesome.
yeah. I mean, it was really cool, especially in Lossum and Yeisha, but my build started to fall apart in Narud because everything is like almost everything is ranged,
Yeah.
at least on the surface.
Yeah.
Okay, design wise, that's one of the things that has me the most perplexed about this game is like there was a clear amount of effort and care put into making melee builds more viable
Yeah.
in this game. And yet the enemy design, like there's so many flying enemies. Half of the world bosses fly and you can't melee them. Like I don't understand. It's like they put so much care into the build crafting of it and they forgot that enemy design is also part of how to make a melee build viable.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was I'm a little perplexed by why there are so many flying bosses in particular.
Yeah, and I just so I hit a bit of a wall when I got there, so I ended up having to grind a bit just to like I upgrade some of my guns a bit more because I had been neglecting them with my resources. But then I don't know, once I got back into the swing of things with the guns, it wasn't too bad, but it did make some of the like bosses like much harder for my build when I'm like I can't run up to it and just wail on it and become invincible. So
yeah, I got into a couple arguments with like George's crew about like the viability of melee and like should it be designed this way, and it just kind of all broke down, and they were like, well, you're still going to use your guns if you're a melee character, like that's 2/3 of your weapon slots is guns, so you would expect to use them. But I'm like, but if you're making a melee build, like shouldn't that be viable? Also, if you're doing guns, you're probably not you're neglecting the third, like the melee portion of it. So yeah, it was just like I think there's a weird design clash between enemies
especially because the challenger is given like especially in the beginning, the challenger is given a shotgun, so it's like you really don't have range. And so you have to like, even then you still have to like go buy like different guns or find different guns for your range attacks to become viable. And I mean, I ended up running like the pistol that fired a single round, and then like either a rifle or like a bow or crossbow that fired a single round because it could just hit so hard.
Yes.
And then most of the time, like all I needed to do is like hit them once with something just to give me time to close the distance, and then it was over.
Yeah.
But then just like in Naru, where there's so many those little fucking drones zipping around, I'm like, okay, I need something a bit more machine gunny for this place.
Yeah, especially because they're zipping around and they can attack you from really far away from the air.
Right. Well, and like I was like running like really heavy armor, so I was kind of flopping a bit with my dodge. And so I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to change my armor too, because like there's so many projectiles. There's like moments it's a little bullet helly. So I'm like, I gotta get ready to dodge, especially with like the eye lasers that they're doing, and like I'm like I gotta be able to dodge those. I can't just
those eyeball mini bosses are terrors.
Yeah, I can't just eat that damage out. It's too much.
Yeah, so
So I mean, I appreciate that it forced me to like switch things up a bit. But then at
Yeah.
the same time, I was like, but now my build feels not as good.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's again with the melee pets and stuff like that. It was like, okay, they're mostly doing nothing in Narude, and
yeah, it's like even with the dog, it's just like, all right, there's just some fights where my dog just stands around and howl when I tell it to.
Yeah, so I started playing it. So I got it on Steam as well because we were playing on PlayStation.
Yeah.
I picked it up on Steam, and because I wanted to play it on Steam Deck while I was traveling.
Oh, cool.
And it runs pretty well if you get the settings just right. But I started with the handler class, and and my first world was Narude. And I'm just like, okay, well, my dog can't like attack the drones, and I'm not leveled up. He can't heal me and stuff yet because it's like he's too early level. So it's just me running around with the dog, shooting stuff in the air, just being like, please level up faster.
Yeah, I mean, if nothing, one thing is at least they draw some fire from you, I guess. But
That's true.
Use of your companions for sure.
Yeah.
Well, moving on to like boss fights. Any memorable favorites for boss fights?
Other than their design not being friendly to certain builds, the world bosses in this game are pretty rad. Just in general, as far as
I think so. Yeah.
Unique. Yeah. Varied.
Unique, cool, like really awesome set pieces with a lot of them.
Yeah.
They did the thing that I really liked from the first game, where like all the world bosses have an alternate kill of some kind that gets you a different drop from them, which I thought was really cool. More of those are sort of puzzle based than they are like achievement based. So some of them are a lot easier to pull off in this one, which I'm sure some people didn't like that, but I was cool with it. I'd rather solve a puzzle than have to kill the two enemies within a couple seconds of each other.
I
feel like that's a boss from Remnant 1 that just
the two
so much time trying to get that drop from them,
especially on a bridge where they're freaking like laser beaming half the bridge. I remember that.
They're flanking and you have to whittle one down and then whittle the other one. Anyway, I didn't find anything as frustrating as that. And man, in general, other than most of them not being friendly to melee builds and melee summons, the bosses were rad, in my opinion.
And some of them, even some of them just felt like more. A lot of them felt connected to like the story of the world in a way too, which was nice.
Way more so. Like, I think the first one was a little more Dark Soulsy, and like the world bosses were connected to the world in some way, but it wasn't like as apparent. Like, whereas. And again, I think this is just a testament to the world stories being so much stronger in this one. The bosses feel like a culmination of the story you're going through in that world. Like if you've typically heard a lot about them as characters or something before you actually encounter them. Which is really cool.
That actually led to me being surprised that like the Red Prince isn't the final boss of that low summon. It was just like, like everyone is talking about this like successor to the one true king, and it's just like the Red Prince is involved, and I'm like, this guy's got to be the final. And then he's like, nope, he's the side dungeon. Like, I was like, oh, okay, well, I like the Red Prince and the multiple ways you can interact with him.
He's even randomized. There's one of two bosses. Basically, it's interesting. Like all of the fairies.
I don't think I got the Red Prince actually.
Oh, cool.
It's sort of interesting because it's like, there's another reason that Lossum is cool and probably the best world is, when you're in the palace storyline, you find a way to switch between sort of the like Malefic Palace and the Beatific Palace. When you're in the Sanitarium version of Lossum, part of your random world roll is whether the palace that you can go into is Malefic or Beatific. So like if you look around when you go into the fairy world, you can see like, are there like torn up banners everywhere and everything's darker? It's like, oh, this is the Malefic one. And that determines like a lot of the encounters that you can have in there, including the Red Prince only shows up if you have the Beatific Palace roll. Yeah, just an interesting thing where if you know both sides of the story, the world fits together and makes sense in kind of a cool way.
Yeah.
Right. There was a couple boss fights that were like I felt a bit overwhelming for like a single player thing. It was
Yes.
almost
like the last one.
Yes,
Oh my God.
I was gonna say, yeah.
Well, and Kev, like I needed your help to help me with the feast boss
Yes.
fight.
Which one was the feast?
Losum. Did you not get the feast, Casey?
I don't think so.
There's like some guy. He's sitting in like a big dining room, and he's like, "Eat. We have to eat. We're celebrating the king or whatever."
no.
And there's just like a bunch of rotten food on the table, and so you eat the rotten food, and it's like you get like a debuff, and like
Ah.
this big fight starts, and it's just like a horde fight where it's
Oh
just
wow.
nonstop enemies, and it's just so hard to do solo
Yeah. That
because there's
also
just so many guys come in.
that also led to another one of my favorite moments in the game, which is when we were both playing it and you went down, and I went to resurrect you, and instead of resurrecting you because we were cursed, I ate you.
You ate me, yeah.
Oh, you guys did get the rabbit. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was expecting to just get you up, and then I just like freaking devoured you.
I
It
did
was
not.
like, oh,
Yeah, I didn't get that, but I'd heard about that
yeah,
interaction.
that was
Because it gets you a
gets you a trait.
Yeah, trait.
Yeah.
The glutton trait, I think it was.
Cool.
Just another like those hidden traits and hidden
Yes.
classes and stuff. That's like a lot of the magic of the game is finding those and being surprised by them and stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah, it was speaking. We could jump forward a little bit, just like speaking of like the single player versus multiplayer experience and the like final boss. It was so interesting with how difficult the one thing one of the very clear memories I have from the first game was how hard the final boss in the first game was playing multiplayer, and then in this one it was like I couldn't imagine doing the final boss solo in Remnant 2. Like I bet it's possible.
The first one, like, it becomes such a bullet sponge.
Yes, yeah, and like, and the like the buff you need to collect while you're in the away team, like that it's hard to get enough stacks to make it viable to like burn down the boss. Yeah,
that last boss in the base game of Remnant 1 felt like it was designed for multiplayer with like teleporting certain people and stuff.
Yeah, but then but then the it was just hard to do. And then this one, I have no idea if the dragon is not if the dragon is focusing you 100% of the time. I have no idea how to TPS him in that first phase. Like,
you know, it's funny. Like I soloed that obviously, and I actually found that like once I got used to the dragon's attack patterns, that was when I could do the damage.
Interesting.
Yeah, because he's like a little more consistent and easier to shoot. Because when you go into freaking nightmare glitch world,
yes,
it's better to just focus on dodging all the time.
Yeah, but, interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, because they share a health pool in the second phase. Okay.
Yeah, they do. So you can just do your DPS in the phase that you find easier, and then focus on surviving in the phase you find harder.
Yeah. Interesting.
Swap back and forth. Yeah.
The bosses leading up to the final boss I thought were also kind of cool and unique and compelling, especially the one in the shipyard. Gave me a little pause.
Yeah. Patrick, did you make it to the last world? The like
no, I had to travel again before I could get to it.
Yeah, I know we lost. Like I remember you leaving kind of right before Casey and I were getting there.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was cool. There's a lot of. It's almost like a boss rush, like a gauntlet at the end of it.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. It's like three bosses in rapid succession.
Yeah, it's like small zone boss, final boss.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're interesting and varied and unique, like we've said. I don't know if we want to spend too much time talking about the overarching narrative, which we've already kind of said was semi-fleshed out. But is there anything memorable about that portion of it?
I mean, I didn't think it was very good.
Yeah.
Especially with how the game leaves it. it's very clearly used as like a platform to launch into these other worlds, which is fine.
Yep.
And then like, they don't really resolve it in like a way that's clear and satisfying at the end. But
Yeah.
man, I can't wait for the DLCs that they have announced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For Remnant 3.
I love the concepts that the first Remnant and this one is like playing with in terms of like the overall story. Like the concepts they're using is like so my jam. Like in the first one, when we're talking about like the dreamers and like the dreams not being a window but a door and like letting
Yeah.
things in from other play, like that's so cool. And like this one with the labyrinth and the fucking
Yeah.
you know
Same.
yeah
It scratches my brain just right. Like this is the
yes
kind of
Yeah.
fiction that I like to consume. This is like
exactly
Yeah.
it's like there's some cosmic horror elements.
Yep.
There's like multiverse stuff. There's world hopping. There's fantasy and sci-fi, and it's all kind of together.
yeah like
Man,
this is my type of sci-fi. Like
Yeah.
it's so fun, and like I wish it was just all more cohesive and like tighter,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. And
It's not bad, but it's like it also it's you know there's a lot of it's you know I guess that's another sort of Dark Soulsy quality of
I was
it,
gonna
where it's
say,
like,
yeah.
it's lore, it's not really narrative.
Yes.
I have hope that I think Remnant 2 did pretty well. I'm looking forward to the DLCs that'll hopefully give us some new worlds and classes and stuff.
Yeah.
And then if they can improve Remnant 3 in the same, if they continue the trajectory they started with Remnant 2, Remnant 3 is going to be something really special because, like,
Agreed.
I just feel like story wise, world density wise, like build crafting wise, like so much of Remnant 2 is just Remnant 1, but better and with some, not even just like improving old ideas, but like some really good new ideas too.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you could tell they were just like trying stuff, which I really respect.
Yeah.
In a game like this. So but yeah, I hope that they continue to tighten the bolts on that narrative.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it did well enough. That
Yes.
So.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It's
there'll probably be a sequel.
I do feel like so many like AA games this year, it got kind of buried in the pile.
I think it cracked like top 3 on Steam daily play, daily DAU. Or
Absolutely,
like that.
yeah,
So,
and it was top seller on Steam for a while. So
yeah, I think it did pretty well in about the week it had before Baldur's Gate 3 came out.
Yes, yeah, agreed, yeah.
But yeah, overall, man, I'm very happy with it, and I hope that Gunfire Games keeps it up.
Yeah, I mean when
I love their stuff.
Yeah, they immediately. I remember like a couple days, maybe a week after the first one launched, they like immediately got bought up by Gearbox.
Yeah, because the first one was such a crazy phenomenon because it was like nobody knew it was coming, and then it just kind of released, and everybody was like, "Wait, this is amazing."
Yes,
yeah, this is cool. Have you heard of this game?
Yeah,
it was like such a like totally under everyone's radar, and then all of a sudden people started trying, and it was like, "Wait, this is so good. Where did this come from?" And then it took like a week or two for them to get bought out, and I think it was Gearbox. Yeah. Which, like, good for them. I'm glad that they still get to keep making these games, and clearly a lot of the design team and stuff is still there and still allowed to take risks and try stuff. So yes.
Yeah. I do think it was curious whether, I think a couple of us were curious on like whether it would launch with the roguelike mode, because like that was our second engagement with the game, was like a couple months after the first one launched. All of a sudden they put out this like roguelike mode, and like that became like a new way to engage with it, and like it doubled my playtime hours with the game, because now it was like, oh, what fancy build and what guns do we get along the way? And I thought that was a really cool way to engage with it. Notably lacking from this one, but I'm curious.
I'm hoping.
Yeah.
Again, I hope they continue the trend they
I
set.
imagine it's coming.
Yeah.
That was a really good mode, and I hope that they maybe have found some ways to improve on it and stuff. But again, they've announced I think 3 or 4 DLCs already. So I'm really excited to see what they put out, because I know that's going to at least mean some new worlds and probably new classes to play with and stuff. So
Did they bring the loadouts in? Have loadouts come in yet?
no, but gosh, this game needs loadouts.
It needed
Agreed.
bad.
100%.
It should have launched with that. I don't know
The
why
only
they thought that would be okay.
also
Yeah.
like
Not have.
a way to sort rings by keywords or something, because holy crap, digging through your inventory for rings.
Or
Yeah.
even, even if it's not like you save custom louds, even if it's just like it remembers what you were wearing when you were that class.
So the only thing that saved me and kept me sane was I realized you could favorite stuff.
Yes. Yes.
So I just like started tagging anything that I knew I wanted to come back to for a build. It's not perfect, but man, it saved my sanity from having to dig through every time I switched to build.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, cool. I think we can wrap it up with some final thoughts. You want to start us off, Patrick?
Yeah, I mean, Remnant 2 is more Remnant, which is exactly what I wanted it to be and needed it to be. And it's, man, it's so good. It's so fun. And it just like scratches so many itches. I wish I had more time to play more of it.
Yeah.
It's that kind of game where I'm just like,
Yep.
I want to just like zone out and play it, for like a few hours every afternoon. I
Yeah.
wish I had time to do that every day.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Kevin, final thoughts?
Yeah. Remnant and Remnant 2 now sort of become one of my favorite game franchises, especially in the context of like, this game is everything that like a double A game should be.
Yeah.
It's inventive, it's creative, it feels awesome to play, it keeps surprising me. It's just like, everything about this game just hit me just right. In a similar way to how the first one did, but more. It was everything I wished it would be. And I know, like I said, a lot of critical things and stuff, but man, that I only get that way about stuff that I just love and I just want more of and want more from.
Yeah.
And I think that, with a small team and again sort of a smaller budget like these are working with, just I can't gush about it enough.
Yeah.
I love it. And yeah, there's some jank, but it's a double A game. It's I guess they're not like fully indie anymore, but it still has that kind of indie energy where they're trying stuff and they're gonna keep fixing stuff, I'm sure. And the devs are really responsive on social media and stuff. It's like cool to see how much they interact with the community. Anyway, just like the game's rad. I don't know. I love it more than most of the AAA games that I've played this year.
Yes.
And it's a pretty stacked year for that. So I mean a lot when I say that.
Yeah, and it going into my final thoughts, like I mean, definitely would recommend, Dark Souls with guns just is an amazing concept to begin with, and then there's so much here that I freaking love, and the narrative, the stories within worlds, I think is so compelling and fun that I love it. One thing that I will say too is like, if anybody was jumping in, like as of this moment, if anybody watches this and then says, "Oh, I want to play this game," I would still jump in and play with them. Like there's no power differential. It's not like I've out leveled you or anything like that. Like it's so easy to just like convince a friend to play after this, that like, and then just hop in and play with them, and you might still see something. Even if you've done most of the game, you might still see something new and exciting. And I think that makes it even better. Like, like my playthrough, I was 2-3 worlds in, I had a friend start fresh, and it was like, cool, I'll just hop in on your world, and like, oh, now I'm seeing all these new things, and like, but you're seeing the entire game for the first time, and like it was still a really cool experience. So yeah, I can't recommend Remnant 2 enough, and I think you're not too late to the to the game to hop in and have your friends who've been playing forever still hop in and play with you.
Absolutely. The variability is so strong. I'm so glad that Yumi and Patrick kind of started playing it and could bounce in between each other's worlds, because it's so exciting to just be like, oh my God, that's so different from what I had in my world. Or, there's a special kind of magic to that, even outside of how just freaking fun the game is to play solo or whatever.
Well, cool. Well, thanks for talking about Remnant 2 with me, Kim and Patrick.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to do it. Happy to highly recommend it.
Yeah. Cool. All right. And as always, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoy this content. If you do, follow, like, and subscribe to me on YouTube and Twitch so you can see more great content like this. I'll have links down below in the description. Thanks again. I hope you have a super day. I hope you have a super month. And I hope you have a super day. Bye.